Marginalized groups can easily end up being unheard and ignored. Most of the videos for this channel are focused on what is shown in media, but the lack of those voices is also important in showing how the poor and marginalized are perceived. An example of this is the film Silent Night. No, not that one, or that one, close, but no, not that one either. How many are there? Wait, go back, that one. This 2021 film is described on Wikipedia as a, quote, British apocalyptic black comedy film. I'd argue that labeling this as a comedy, even for a British film, is a stretch, but that's another argument for another day. Spoilers if that bothers you, the crux of this film is that it is going to be the last Christmas, and the family and friends staying at the country home each have a pill that will make the end of their lives quick and quiet without suffering through the poisonous gas that will emit through the air. It's unclear whether it is from the Russians or the planet Earth itself, but the origin of the poison isn't important. With Mothra the Bunny of data science, let's look at a film that leaves marginalized groups without a voice of their own, silent and unseen in the background. Feel free to like, subscribe, or ring the bell. The actions at the start of the film are a bit confusing at first, especially if you don't know what is coming. During the opening credits, we see Simon throwing chickens over a fence, freeing them into the woods. Later, it's explained that he and his wife felt it would be more humane to let the foxes get to the chickens before the poison in the air does. When Sandra arrives, she is wearing an expensive coat and explains she spent the money from her daughter's college fund on it because her daughter Kitty isn't going to need it anymore. Even basic ethics and consideration for others is thrown out the window for this bunch because Bella shows up with an Hermes coat that her girlfriend Alex, quote, hit a lady with a burqa to get. A couple of the men break into a Tesco grocery store and steal sticky toffee pudding. When the meal is being prepared, Nell explains that there is only one potato available per person because it was all that was left to buy or steal. We are not shown any of the people in the town for the majority of the film. When there are camera shots outside of the house, it is void of people and most animals as a dark cloud looms closer toward them. Aside from one or two characters, the majority of those staying in this country estate for the holiday are at least upper middle class and have money saved up that they can spend on large, last-minute purchases. They have enough wealth to splurge, but certainly aren't billionaires. The parents work to try and make the holiday feel normal, not allowing negativity, yet trying to encourage being honest, though it is arguably lip service. It is at the holiday meal where it's clarified that it is the literal last Christmas, since there is the poison that will soon travel through the air, with deadly effects on all in its path. Pills have been provided, but there are a couple guests who aren't completely sold on taking this item provided by the government. Sandra's daughter Kitty argues with Art, saying that the pill is provided because, quote, our government doesn't want us to suffer. Art's response is, quote, you mean not suffer like the people in Africa who are poor? Which causes an uproar at the table. He soon leaves to his room to watch informational videos online provided to citizens. Art isn't wholly convinced that the impending poison will be 100% fatal. He thinks there is a possibility people won't actually be pushing up daisies, but there isn't any proof that he can find. James's girlfriend Sophie is also undecided when it comes to taking this pill, as she has recently learned that she is pregnant and is unsure what the effects would be. While Art's parents are well off, Sophie is from a lower socioeconomic background. It's explained that Sophie's boyfriend James was originally from Nigeria but moved up from his humble beginnings and is now a doctor that works in the cancer ward of a hospital. The other family and friends look down on Sophie, especially Sandra, who remarks on her age and appearance, though it is mostly due to the fact that she wanted to be with James rather than her husband Tony. Bella's girlfriend might also be from a lower socioeconomic background as well, but it is not very clear. With that background information, one of the ways they are trying to celebrate the holiday is to be honest, as mentioned previously. In reality, it's only some honesty. When the truth gets a bit too real, especially in connection to the children, it's often shut down and covered with toxic positivity. When the kids are unwrapping presents, most of them are visibly happy and participating in the festivities. However, Art is unsettled by the situation. As he reads the headlines from the newspaper used to wrap the gifts, he becomes angry and screams about the pointlessness of opening presents that are going to last longer than they are. Toxic positivity is explained in a couple videos on my channel, such as The Pressure to Succeed and Dave Ramsey's Poor Financial Advice, so I won't get too much into detail with that here. After Art leaves the holiday meal, his father goes after him to talk. Art wants to know the truth. More specifically, the truth as to whether or not everyone was given a pill. To the dad's credit, he is truthful about this part and explains that homeless people and illegal immigrants weren't given a pill because, quote, according to the government, they don't legally exist. The son is confused because these people clearly exist. and one of his parents' reasons for him taking this pill is that it's not right to suffer. But if that's the case, why are the unhoused and illegal immigrants in the country allowed to suffer? His dad gives a non-answer, explaining that it's complicated. Art is adamant that it's wrong to not help them. The response from his dad is telling, quote, "We can't help them ourselves, we just have to take our pills and choose not to suffer. We don't have a choice," end quote. In reality, they have a choice as to whether or not to take this pill, unlike those people who don't exist. We'll come back to this. This theme of honesty and ethics weaves throughout the film. As mentioned in other videos, there are multiple studies that show that the wealthy have a higher likelihood of being dishonest and unethical. In the NBC News article linked below, it mentions 4 studies where the higher income bracket was more likely to act rudely, such as not yielding to pedestrians in a crosswalk. The article says, quote, "While there are examples of rich people who are especially generous, think Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, money seems to have a deleterious effect on ethics in most cases," Piff says. The solution? He suggests mandatory ethics classes for people studying economics and business, end quote. The wealthier characters seem to fit this, whether it's Bella's girlfriend attacking another person for a designer code, or Sandra wasting her daughter's college fund. Not every source necessarily agrees, such as the article from WZB Berlin Social Science Center, which didn't see a difference. Before some of you get excited, this is actually an example of poor research design. It focuses on farmers' actions before harvest when they are poorer and after harvest when they have money, rather than on subjects that grew up in poverty versus those who grew up wealthy. I include this article as it is an example of the importance of how and who designs a study. At best, it's a neutral result. At worst, it's disinformation that feeds into stereotypes. To reiterate, this study was not designed well. Scientific literacy matters, and this is just a reminder to look at source material for articles. For the most part, though, the majority of studies and articles point to the wealthy being more unethical, though the theories as to why vary. From The Atlantic, quote, "The researchers suggest a number of reasons why upper-class individuals are more prone to unethical behavior, citing their relative independence from others and increased privacy in their professions, and the availability of resources to deal with the costs of unethical behavior. Previous research has found that feelings of entitlement, inattention to the consequences of one's actions on others, and an increased focus on achieving goals also play a role," end quote. To bring this back to the movie, even though this idea of truth and honesty is tossed around, the characters pretty much stick to their roles, as it were. Reality has no place here and is met with silent disdain when it is brought up. James's girlfriend Sophie is already looked down on in general, and when they all sit down for a meal, she starts to eat before they have said grace. Rather than say anything, everyone at the table stares at her in disbelief, as if she has committed the most egregious sin, because her actions are ruining the veneer of the perfect holiday they want to have at the end. It isn't until James breaks the silence and mentions that they should say grace first that she realizes her faux pas. He could have been rude about it, but was instead kind and understanding. He recognized no one was going to be honest with Sophie about their reaction. When Sophie starts to discuss her family and how she said goodbye to them, she is pragmatically honest about the situation they are in. Several adults at the table speak over her loudly in an attempt to shut her up because they don't actually want to hear about anything related to those poor people, unhoused, and illegal immigrants. Even when Sophie continues to speak, they don't stop speaking over her and instead continue to speak louder and louder in order to take away her voice. If that wasn't enough, it turns out Sophie is actually pregnant, and Nell instructs her not to say anything to the kids. They want honesty about certain things, but reality has no place. Due to the pregnancy, Sophie isn't sure how the baby will be affected by this pill and hasn't fully decided whether or not to actually take it. Art and Sophie have some camaraderie in this, since both have trepidations about the poison and how the pill will work. When Art asks James more specifics about how it will work and its efficacy, James doesn't lie, but he is judicious about how he explains things. He recognizes he can't force Sophie to take the pill, for example, but he prefers that she will decide to do so. As the adults are downstairs dancing and drinking, Art tells James that he is not scared of the pain that will come from the poison. James tells him that he doesn't truly understand what pain is, and as a doctor on a cancer ward, he has seen people who choose to end their life because the pain they experience is intolerable. From Art's discussion with these two, he decides that he is not going to take the pill and asks his mom if he can wait out the attack with Sophie, who is also planning to not take it. His mom, Nell, is enraged, explaining that no one should suffer, and while they are not responsible for the oncoming danger, they need to do what's best for their family because, quote, suffering is bad. She doesn't mention anything about the people who don't exist on paper for the government. Art is still unable to accept her logic, quote, We all deserve to live, even old people, and it's the right thing to do. Throughout this movie, he has tried to understand the reality of the situation and has more hope than the other characters because he thinks there is a possibility that the people will survive, and he is able to see beyond the small setting he is currently in. Art's mother tells him that whether he takes this pill or not, it's the same outcome. However, there will be no one to comfort him through the pain, and she doesn't want her babies to suffer. He argues back that if his parents unalive him, then he's no longer family anyway, and runs out of the house into the woods. After a short run, he sees a car, and inside on the dashboard are the unopened pills from the government. Upon further inspection, the people in the car, including a baby, do not appear to be living, and there is blood coming from their eyes. Having seen the results of not taking the pill and that people will no longer be alive, Art begins to scream when faced with this reality. In doing so, he inhales the surrounding poison. His dad grabs him up and takes him back to the house, informing everyone that the poison has arrived now that it's past midnight. Art passes out and is presumed to be unalived, so he does not take the pill, whereas everyone else in the house, including Sophie, has. As morning arrives, the house and nature outside are quiet. The camera pans around the different characters before ending at Art, who suddenly opens his eyes, which implies that the only people left are people who didn't take this pill, such as the illegal immigrants, the unhoused, and most likely the poorest people. In a way, a happy ending. This isn't the only apocalyptic movie that glosses over poor and marginalized peoples. In Silent Night, Art is a person that brings up how the situation is affecting marginalized groups, but we don't get a direct voice. Even if the poor and marginalized are in the film, they may still be missing their voice. Leave the World Behind is another example that focuses mostly on two families. One is upper middle class, and the other wealthy. When there are immigrants or poor people shown, it's extremely brief. When Clay is driving into town for supplies, he meets a woman that speaks Spanish and clearly in distress. No subtitles in English are provided, and Clay eventually drives off without helping her, even though it's clear something is wrong. For those of us who do speak Spanish, it's clear that she is saying she is lost and needs help. Even for a person with a basic understanding of the language, certain phrases like "ayúdame por favor" in a panicked tone provide a hint. Another thing Spanish speakers would have caught before Clay rolls up his window is that the woman mentions seeing a plane that was spraying a red gas, unsure if it is a chemical attack. Since there are no subtitles provided, it is not accessible to non-Spanish speakers, which highlights the issues with racism and the language barrier. The situation is confusing, and this hectic environment highlights how lost it can feel when you aren't understood by those around you when you desperately need help. Being seen and heard is difficult for many of us. Growing up with the message to just keep your head down, work hard, and trudge through without complaining feeds into this capitalistic hellscape that exploits the poor and pressures us to not speak up. It can be depressing to see how little those in government and positions of authority choose not to hear the voices of poor and marginalized people. In the case of Silent Night, the people left are those who didn't have a voice in the situation. If we assume the Queen was hiding in a bunker and didn't take this pill, she's now going to be accountable to these same people. And honestly, it's about time. Until next time.
More wine, Monsieur Queen?
Yes, I would like some more. Thank you. I'm most gracious.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I love wine.
What's it like living in the Buckingham Palace?
Ooh, spooky.
Oh,
Come on back and see me again for some more fun learning. And remember, treat other people the way you want to be treated, okay? I've got to go now. So long!